Hello all, welcome to the Legend of Gaming podcast. This is Matt.
And you got Cliff.
Today we will be discussing Battle Royales. From Fortnite to PUBG to Fall Guys, we're going to be covering it all. But before we jump into that, we are going to go over the Cliff Notes. Cliff?
In this Cliff Note, we're going to recap and update what happened in Episode 2 RPGs. Now, we went over a big catalog of a bunch of different games that we both enjoy, how it helps us escape from the world we're in, and even just the rewards of the challenges that we face in them. The best part is at the very end, we even leave some recommendations for you guys to try if you're new to games or if you're looking for a challenge. Now, there were a few notes we definitely want to just cover, add a little bit of information, just so you can get a nice feel of what was going on. One of the things was in Minecraft, there was actually a mention of someone building a computer, but we never said the name. I went back, I found it, and it's LPG. That's their initials for their username, and they actually made the specific computer that I saw that had a keyboard and a mouse. Now, there is a bit of history I do want to tie into this, just because there is certain stages of building a computer. So, LPG definitely made one of the first functional computers. This is where you can use applications, you can hold memory, which is very impressive. Now, when it comes to the first mechanical computer, now this doesn't have like a proper like interface, but it could input certain things, it could output certain things, it could hold memory. This accomplishment goes to a user that goes by Internet FTW. Now, he created this back in September 2010, which is a good time ago, and during that time, Redstone and all the functionality wasn't something that had a lot of bells and whistles, so it was really impressive that he was able to pull this off. Even the idea that after he built this, the creator of Minecraft, his name is Notch, saw this and was impressed. I think that's something that you can really take and say, I've elevated the way you might think of this game. Really cool about this sandbox. Now, I wanted to find out what was the equivalent counterpart in real life. So, a man named Charles Babbage in 1822 actually made the first mechanical computer that's having proper inputs, outputs. When it comes to the first computer that you could actually use, make applications, run applications, all of that sort. This was by a man called Xerox Alto. Now, Xerox Alto was the first person to make a computer that actually had a mouse. You could run applications, store information, and I believe also connected to the Ethernet. This was the first device to actually have functionality to this extent. This was actually made in the 1970s, so it's really interesting just to see that same type of progression in real life and how it was carried out through a game. Now, the last two things we have on the Cliff Note are really quick, but it is definitely worth mentioning. Final Fantasy, the question was, does it have a card game? And I'm here to tell you, yes. It actually has 6 different card games. Some will be similar to card games that already exist, and some are actually ones they made their own. I think this is something we might dedicate to make our own episode altogether. That's something to see in the future. And the last question that we have, the last note we need to cover, is the developer of Infamous. I never mentioned it. It's Sucker Punch Productions. Shout out to them for how they narrated that story and how they continued that story throughout their franchise. Now, let's go ahead and kick off with our episode going over Battle Royales. So, having Battle Royale is going to be a very interesting piece for us. It's only been around for not too long, and I think we can kind of start off just going over the ones that we've played that I think kind of had an impact on us. I started off with PUBG, and I know that have you ever tried it?
I played PUBG maybe 10 years ago.
Okay.
And I think I played it after like the life cycle of the game.
Gotcha.
So it was the point where like there were people who were either hacking or they're just dog shit, and I was dog shit.
I got you. I can attest to it to the point where I played it online. It came over to mobile, and then I started playing it on mobile. I think one of the things that drew me in is that it always had like a desert, for the most part, like type of style to it. It felt very new, felt very unique, having it where, especially since you had your own team for the first time, that you're going against such a broad number. I think that's where they really sell you on just how many people you're going up against.
Was it a squad of 4? Was it a
squad of 4?
Trio? Okay, squad of 4. Well, I mean, I think PUBG was one of the first battle royales that like made its indent as its own iteration of a game.
Right.
I had played Arma.
Okay.
Which, like, you were a big advocate for Minecraft when we were talking about RPGs, right? And I know that there were battle royale mods in Minecraft prior to PUBG. I didn't play those, so like those would be something we could probably look into. That's probably something that led to the iteration of like Minecraft Dungeons. But the one that I did play a lot of was DayZ.
Okay.
Which ended up becoming a survival game. But the whole principle was it was a mod inside of Arma that led to another game. There was also a battle royale inside of Arma where essentially you started off with no armor. You would get different rarities of armor, helmets, weapons, and obviously if you died, you lost all that progress. So I think a lot of the allure was you had value in your life and you're kind of fighting for your life in that game. Less of a battle royale drop, that intense let's loot quickly so I can take out other people, which is what it kind of evolved into, you know?
Yeah. So was the survivability the biggest thing that like kind of pulled you in, where you're like, man, like I really want to see if I can make it through this?
I would say yeah, absolutely. You know, whenever you look at a lot of the games that we grew up with, it was just you're playing a story or you're picking a genre for characters that you're familiar with.
Right.
I think this was, I'm not familiar with the character. I'm really unfamiliar with having to fight for my life. I live day to day. I go work at 9 to 5. I buy, food from the mall or from wherever I want. It's really convenient. So to play a video game where you have to grind and fight for every little ounce of what you have, and so does everyone else. So there's a little bit of distrust between people.
Okay.
I absolutely love that part of the survivability. That's not really what attracted me to Battle Royale. I think it was the intensity of the fights.
Okay.
I've never been one to play like a war game where you fly planes and you have a dogfight.
Right.
I feel like when I'm in a Battle Royale, all of those fights are a dogfight. I feel like we're out there and I'm like grinding in the dirt, trying to take, even Fortnite. Fortnite's very colorful. I feel that similar characteristic. But, jumping back to PUBG, that's what I felt when I played that game. I felt a sense of like, they're really coming in. They're coming to take my life. You're throwing grenades. These gunshots, 1 or 2 will take you out. Really like that. That's very, very different from the Halos, the games that I was familiar with, where you have an overshield. You have 10 shots till you're dead.
Right.
It's a different type of intense.
You're not concerned about your next meal.
Absolutely. Is that the aspect that brought you into it? Was it the survivability? Was it the loot grabbing? What brought you in? Because I didn't play PUBG, so I don't know what the win was other than surviving out everyone else.
It wasn't too much survivability because it didn't have that aspect like how DayZ 1 definitely had that piece. I would say it was a little bit more of just like seeing who was going to come out on top. It was definitely a game that I always had like a squad of 4. Playing alone, it definitely gives you a sense of just how vast things are. You feel like you can be any type of person you want while you're playing it. You can be very out and about trying to catch people's attention, or you can be sneaking around trying to make it where it's just like, okay, I want to be the last one, and then I can engage in someone properly where it's like, okay, I can still win this without putting myself in a certain situation. So I think the different ways you could play it and just the number of people was probably what drew me in, knowing that I was in this lobby and there's over 100 people in here, about 100 people. that's the part where it's like, man, like this is a massive like match that we're doing today.
What was the level design like? Because obviously, you know, that's something that I think Warzone, over its iterations, has done really well.
Yeah.
And failed. So like, there's been some maps that I really liked.
Right.
I really like the prison map where you're on this little island and it's really intense and there's nooks and crannies and you can kind of just play a really quick running gun, or you can like hold down a building and you're gonna have intensity either way. And then, you know, transitions to larger maps where there might be a vast desert or a big mining little coal town, but no one wants to drop there. So it's like really a dead zone. Was that something that PUBG had done successfully? Did they have really engaging maps? Or was it something that was just, that was the first one to the market and, you know, first come, first serve, it was just good timing?
I think they had engaging maps, but they didn't have enticing maps, like places. So like they would have like certain like facilities that you can land at, different bridges. They had waterways, desert areas, stuff like that. So you did get a feel of like, okay, I can be in an area where it's very grassy, mountain areas, or I can be in an area where it just feels like a straight up desert. But I think it, if you look at the graphics behind it, you can tell that it was in its grainy stage. It wasn't polished. It was very trying to think of like an older game that like was almost to the edge. I want to say if they came out maybe like 5 years later on, I think they would be a lot more relevant, just by graphics alone, maybe.
I mean, so what if they came out 5 years later with the same graphics? So maybe that would have been the downfall too. You know, maybe that's a doing of the studio. And the reason I bring that up is, you know, Fortnite really had a graphical appearance I didn't care for.
Okay.
I really didn't like the cartoony, but I did grow fond of areas of the map, which is just so interesting, right? I want to fall at Dusty Depot. I want to go to Retail Row. I want to go to Tilted Towers back to back to back to back. And that's something that I really hadn't experienced before in a video game, where maybe I had a fondness for an area, for that level design, for maybe the fights that it brought with it, or, you know, the type of pacing. And that's something that I think, you know, one of the many elements that I think Fortnite did really successfully. But when I look at PUBG, I like the graininess. I'm not even going to give it, you know, faults to the point. Like, I really thought the graininess is one of the things that made it attractive. I just felt like there was no progress ever. I felt like the PUBG I played at the very beginning was the same PUBG I played 2.5 years later, whenever, you know, I got on to see if anyone was still playing.
Right.
Fortnite, Seasons of Change is not always good, but Fortnite has both. Fortnite has, you know, Fortnite No Build. It has Fortnite the OG season. It has chapters, so I think it has a little sprinkling of everything for everyone. Whether you're a 10-year-old, whether you're a 50-year-old, whether you're an old gamer, you're a new gamer, there's going to be something in there that's for you.
Right.
And maybe that's just one of the areas that PUBG missed out. Did they have skins?
They had certain skins, but it wasn't to the degree, nowhere near the degree of like Fortnite, where you had it where you can get all these different characters from different games and stuff like that, from the time that I played. So, but it was different things that you can customize, and I think that kind of highlights a good point of how you're saying a lot of people can connect with Fortnite over all the different options you have, right? So like even you were mentioning like earlier on when we were talking a little bit, you were mentioning like being Vegeta. Like that's something that someone would want to do, and having that play is something I think was probably something they missed out on. They definitely could have done. Maybe they're doing it now.
In context, what are you talking about? It's like we were talking before we got on the podcast today, and it's like the office that we're recording in, I have a bunch of Dragon Ball Z toys and One Piece toys. I'm a big anime nerd, and one of the things that always attracted me to Fortnite is this collaboration of pop culture, where my 10-year-old nephew, who gritties and does skibbity toilet and all these wild things that I really can't understand, he's on there with the skins that he likes. And I'm on there with Vegeta, gritty in on kids, because that's something that like makes me smile, right? And I think that's one of the attractiveness, or one of the things that makes Fortnite so attractive. When you look at a gate of entry, a lot of people are like, hey, I don't have that newest system. Hey, I don't have a computer that's good enough to do that. Hey, I don't have, a good enough internet connection. I think Fortnite really has a good enough forum that is cross-platform. I play with people on a Switch.
Yeah.
Daily, almost many times per week, and I don't think they're at a disadvantage. We still pull out wins, and I think that speaks volumes. Games aren't cheap, so like having the ability to play something for free is really important.
Yeah.
Now, we were talking about the pop culture part. Yeah, that does cost money. I think that's where there's positives and negatives that come with it. I think the ability to get V-Bucks, I actually think Fortnite has a pretty charitable system. You get the season pass, you do get your money back. Yeah, you need to put $10 in one time, but you can continue to get that $10 back to continue to get that pass and get the skins, and you don't have that FOMO, right? You don't have that fear of missing out.
Yeah.
Where I was the kid that didn't necessarily have that money, had to cut grass to get money for games. I can appreciate that for kids nowadays, that maybe they only have an iPad, or they only have access through a Switch, or through their brother's system.
Right.
But they still can have their own individual identity on the game, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm talking about being Vegeta and gritty. I want to be that angry guy. A lot of times I'm Frieza, and my wife's like, please stop playing that character. He looks crazy. But like that's what brings me into it, right?
Right.
Have you ever played Fortnite?
I've actually never played Fortnite, and there was actually one moment to kind of point out how I really wanted to. They actually came out with, if I remember, Attack on Titan skins, and you could actually play as the characters. And I, at the moment, was watching Attack on Titan. I was going back over it, and I think that was the closest I came to actually probably hopping on. But there are certain things that's always intrigued me to kind of jump in. I know one of them was they actually added something with Rocket League I've always wanted to explore. And they also added something with Legos too, if I'm not mistaken. So I think they do a really good job of reaching out to all the different people they could actually collaborate. And I think that's where their success continues. If I'm not mistaken, they're actually the first ones to do like a live concert.
You're not mistaken, and I just wanted you to get the whole thought out. No, I really agree. I think that's where Fortnite is one of the few companies that made their way into the space and then continued to evolve.
Right.
I as an older player cannot build with these children and or people on a computer. Right. I just can't. I can't. I still love to play the game. So when they added no build, you've evolved a little bit. You may have taken away from that regular player count, but the people who want to play that aspect of it can. Then you have the OG season. Hey, let's call back to those players that may have left 10 years ago, 8 years ago. Let's get them back in there. And the reality is there is a healthy middle ground for everyone. It's you just can't listen to everyone and say yes. There has to be, a boundary. And I think Fortnite finds a really good middle ground. Obviously, you make mistakes too. There's times where they've cut down the Fortnite shop to where you couldn't get any skins, and obviously it added to the rarity, right? Like, ooh, I have this skin and it's no longer in the shop. Also, there's people who didn't play the game that are 6 years old right now that weren't alive when that skin came out. Give them the opportunity to get it at least once.
Right.
Obviously, OG fans, sometimes their pride gets hurt. They're like, no, that's my skin. I had that. But that's where I think listening to fans and being able to bring some of those things out of the vault, being able to let some of the younger kids enjoy it, I think it's important. And I think it's the same concept as Nintendo Switch having a store where you can buy N64 games or buy NES games.
Right.
The difference is what? You're older, so it's different? No, like I think it's just being able to make it more accessible for even kids now, where their 10-year-old brother, 11-year-old brother is the OG.
Right.
And then a 5-year-old's the new one getting into a game, playing with maybe their 25, 30-year-old dad, uncle, aunt, sister, mom, whatever, right? Because we all enjoy it.
So I would definitely say, just to kind of touch up on being able to go into multiple different platforms. PUBG, at first, even though I played on a different device, playing it on mobile was the main source for me. And I think having that accessibility actually brought me back into the game, which was a nice thing.
did it feel the same way on mobile that it would feel when you'd played it on like your PC or a tablet? Like, I know a tablet is considered mobile, but like, was that functionality, did it feel the same across all platforms, or was there like a difference when you'd played on mobile?
It really comes down to the controller. I think visually, everything's the same. You have it where you still have the same perspective of your field of view. You still have the same HUD and stuff like that, but depending on how you're playing mobile, that's where it's going to have a difference. You could be playing with a controller. During that time, I don't believe there was controller compatibility, but there is now for sure. So that made things a little bit easier. You didn't have to be right on your screen, touching every single thing and not getting the full view of what you're looking at as well. And I think that draws back on the game.
Is it mobile matchmaking? So like, whenever you play mobile, does it segment you out from console players or PC players? Because I just feel like that skill gap would be crazy. Not all games?
Not all games. I think that's very game specific. To kind of like touch just a little bit, because on Rivals, I know right now you can't play with anyone on PC, but consoles can play with each other. And I think that's just really like a specific game choice that they do, depending on just how high the skill cap can be.
Well, in Rivals, I think did it right, because you can play with PC players. You just cannot do ranked. They're like, hey.
Yes, that's true. Yes.
Daddy ranked. Not allowed.
No,
we're gonna keep it filtered. But what's crazy is, I get what you mean. I get what you mean. Like, that is one of those things where there can really be on the high end of skill a change. I just didn't know. I was curious, whenever you're playing something like PUBG, where we had talked about grainy graphics and we talked about, that being not the appeal. I figured maybe making it so that it ran smoothly across all would be a priority, and it was just, obviously it is, because if you're saying you played it on mobile primarily and enjoyed it, that means they did something right? Like, they did something right.
And to even touch back on the graininess, they had it where they had different abilities to upgrade the graphics in the settings, so it wasn't something you were stuck with. But depending on what you're using and what your situation is, you might not want it on the highest level of graphics because you're running it on your phone, and that just it doesn't translate as well as if you're running it on a console or something else. So that's where there's different settings that can definitely change your experience, especially what type of device you're using. But having that access to multiple devices is the nice touch to it.
Can I give my dirty little secret?
Please do.
Whenever I used to play survival games, I would turn my graphics all the way down.
That's
because a lot of times I could not see people when the graphics were up too high, and they would like blend in with the mesh with the ghillie suit and stuff. So I'd just turn it down and I'd be like, well, the guy looks like a turd. It's probably the human, so let me shoot at him. But it would so take away from the experience.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you can really appreciate some games, it's intended to be visually pleasing. And then some games it's not. It's intended to be, war. A little bit of war. And I can appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of war, was Warzone, I know that you didn't play Fortnite, and PUBG and Fortnite are on the opposite ends of the spectrum. I think Warzone's a really healthy medium between the two. Have you ever dipped your toes in that pool?
No, I actually haven't. And I think this kind of ties back to a few other episodes that we've done. I think the moment Advanced Warfare came out, I stepped away from Call of Duty altogether. But I saw the excitement behind Warzone because it was Call of Duty's first version stepping out of what they normally do. But I do also see where some people are like, I don't particularly favor it. I think it's very particular game, depending on like what you like and what you would want. I can see myself playing it, but I know how many seasons they've gotten into. So it's always daunting to try to jump into a game that's been out for a while, a lot of multiplayer. The people that are playing it are very established in what they're doing. But I do see how many options there is in that game.
They do have a very dedicated player base, but like, anyone who's heard in the episodes with you knows that you're going to bring up Assassin's Creed, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I think that Call of Duty really has a similar vein in its fans. Like, the people that are there, a lot of people make jokes and like it's fanatics, right? Like, we're Warzone fanatics or Call of Duty fanatics, but no, I just think they're dedicated.
Yeah.
And I think they're dedicated because each iteration does have something different to offer. I think where it's difficult with Warzone has gotten a little muddied with my microtransactions.
Okay.
You know, the Fortnite pop culture effect of bringing things in has come over to Warzone, where they have added some of those funnier skins, which is hard because like we're talking about PUBG and it's so serious,
right?
And there's not funny skins. And then, you know, Warzone is whether it's modern, whichever iteration you're playing of Call of Duty, it's intended to be serious, realistic, right? And I think that's where Warzone started to kind of lose its identity, and it got away from having really intriguing maps. There's a lot of really tall buildings that got nothing in them. Zip line to the top, you have, you know, maybe a floor, first floor, second floor, and it's like things like that are what take me away. I don't need a 50-foot tall building or a 50-floor building. Give me different level design. Give me an underground exit. Give me 6 entrances. So, like, you know, we have to really think. There was one iteration where they had a prison on the edge of the map. I loved that version of Warzone, and I sucked.
Okay.
I was getting my ass chewed up with my friends, and all they were doing is listening to me scream because I'm getting RPG'd. But it was fun.
Yeah.
I think where, to your point, you know, the fear of people being established, the people that are playing right now are hardened, and they really love the game, and the game's in a really bad state. There's a lot of hackers, and not like hackers like I'm getting beat by someone who knows how to play the game better than me. Absolutely, that happens. Absolutely. Been there. Oh my god, I think he's got an aimbot. I think he can see me through the wall. You know, I've been there.
Yeah.
No. There are people jumping out of helicopters and just doing 360s and shooting random bullets and getting like 3 or 4 headshots in a kill cam. That is where I'm a little deterred.
Right.
I don't want to have to get in and not only have to overcome the skill gap, because absolutely there's going to be that, but like when the skill gap is due to cheats, it's making it impossible, right? Right. Warzone has the ability to be a phenomenal game still. Yes. Guess what? Not everyone has $70 to go buy the next Call of Duty. Not everybody has 200 gigs also to download Warzone. It's an enormous download. But, you know, the amount of hard drive space, it's still free to download. Yeah. And you don't need to buy skins. I think it has its own niche crowd. I would still say try it. it. You're a really competitive guy. I think that you would enjoy it. Especially if you like PUBG. I think that it is a faster paced PUBG. Okay. I think there's more options. But I would also tell you the ailment of seasonal changes, chasing that microtransaction, chasing that fad is something that Call of Duty has really fallen into, and they're more worried about that than optimizing the game. I see. Right? It's like, not that the game itself is bad, but I would definitely say the priorities sometimes put it in a really interesting place. How do you feel about microtransactions, or just battle royales in general? Because you know, one thing that we can talk about first is how you feel about microtransactions, but there's other games that have battle royales that aren't just first-person shooters. So, first thing, what are your thoughts on microtransactions, good or bad?
I think microtransactions are good if they don't have anything to do with skill.
Dímelo. I understand as a gamer, but like for the general gamer, what do you mean?
So to kind of give a good contents of this, if you played Star Wars Battlefront 2, they were one of the biggest to do microtransactions. And there was certain characters you couldn't even unlock unless you were pretty much using microtransactions. Having those characters gave you a one-up. It gave you an extra, oomph in your play. And that's where you have microtransactions that are controlling the skill and not just something where it's customization.
So when people use the term pay to win, is that what you mean? Like, because I see that a lot online. So the pay to win is, if I pay for this skin or this character, in this instance, this character, that character is actually more powerful than maybe the other characters out there.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
It was really bad for that game, and I think they wind up changing a lot of things because of that situation. But to kind of tie back into Battle Royales, I think them giving the option where the game is free, you don't need to potentially buy into any of the skills, and you can enjoy the game as much as you want. I think the microtransactions make it where it still helps support the game for the people that want to jump in and let me buy this, let me get that skin. Oh, this looks really good this season. It helps support the game up and running. And it also allows people that just want to play it for free and it's like, all right, I might not have a fancy skin, but I get to play this as much as I want. I think that's where microtransactions, I do agree and understand where they're coming from, because the people that make the games, they put in a lot of work into it. And I know that there's other people that are getting paid along the way, but that is that piece that is keeping it where everyone's getting supported. So, yeah.
No, I love that. And I think that's where with Fortnite, right, they have like creator codes, and you can actually give some of those proceeds to the creator that created the skin, or
Right.
people that brought you to that market. I think where it's hard is like, we're talking about this, and there are positives in most of the instances we've talked about. I think Overwatch 2, even though that is not a Battle Royale game, they were an ailment of Battle Royale success.
Right.
Battle Royales really learned, hey, making it free brings in so many new users.
Right.
But they had a really good pricing scheme. I won't call it a scheme. Pricing format where like $7 gets you a pretty good skin.
Yeah.
$15 gets you a premium, really good skin. $20 gets you maybe a bundle, right? Other more greedy games saw that and took what they thought was good and took the worst parts of it, like Overwatch, where the game now is free, but the skins are $35.
That's a lot.
And they're reskins. And never, I want to be very clear, I appreciate art, and all people who work in art, they are priceless. Like, what you offer me, I appreciate it so much.
Right.
I also will say, original content and a reskin, a recolorization, a just changing the colorway on a skin, those are two different things. I'm willing to pay $5, maybe if you're lucky, for a reskin. I don't want to pay $20 for something that you just changed the shaders.
Right. Right.
That is an ailment that felt there amongst Overwatch, where I think Fortnite really has managed to stay away from it. Warzone, getting a little muddied now.
Okay.
There's some skins that are just like, I don't know why this is here. I don't know what the theme is. And I'm not going to call them out. I think that if you play Warzone, you would know which ones are. There's a handful of them. I'll show you after.
Okay.
But it's really, maybe that's something that brought somebody in too. So, I don't want to be the guy judging and throwing rocks from a glass house.
I would say one other thing that we haven't talked about is definitely Fall Guys. It definitely made a nice appearance. It's very colorful, and it gives a nice silliness to a battle royale. It's something that, like, when I play it, I don't take it too seriously. I definitely feel it where I can have a bunch of people join in, and we just know we're just going for fun.
All right, I don't want to break it to you. I've played like 3 games.
That's okay.
For someone who hasn't played Fall Guys, give us a 30-second, what is Fall Guys? I know it's Chaos Incarnate. Yes. I know I run around as essentially a doughboy.
Yes.
That can jump and grab.
That is spot on. You are a really funny looking potato, and you are running through a course that kind of looks like, if you've seen Wipeout, that is probably like the perfect like piece of it. So you're running through like a course that looks like Wipeout. Your goal is to be the last one. There is options of being it where it's like the team is the last one, or you could just do a solo queue. But because of the shape you are running through the obstacle course, it's just hilarious. The way that you have to try to jump over things that are moving fast, the way it strikes you. If you ever find like ragdoll effects really funny, this is a game that I would definitely recommend.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was very reminiscent of the game with imposters, but whenever you see the actual gameplay,
Yeah.
it looks hilarious. It looks like a Mario Party-esque jamboree of games where the goal is madness.
Really? What? Could you tell me a little bit more?
Like, I saw one game where you had to traverse a puzzle, but there's essentially like a windmill in the middle, and all these little fat potatoes were running through and pulling each other off of the sides to the point where, like, I think the objective to get through the game wasn't even really the goal of it anyway. I think the goal was to rip people off of the map. So maybe my Fall Guy experience has been different.
Yeah.
But I've not played any single match of it where it's been like linear. Like, okay, you have to jump on the squares back and forth to survive, right?
Right.
Oh, someone will just grab me and run to a corner and try to fall off the map with me. And I'm like, okay. Was
Very
your goal
good
to get in here just to murder me? And the answer is yes. Because, again, it's like 50 people in there.
Right.
And not everybody is like... Not even everyone's an adult. There's probably like kids in there that are just mashing buttons, but I guess it's part of the allure, right? Like, it brings you in. I know you're looking at me like I'm mad, but that's been my experience. I've not made it to the end of a single Fall Guys map ever.
I've made it to a few, and I've won, I think, maybe like 3, to be honest with you.
I'm talking about not one round. I've not made it from the first round where I've started to the end of the map to the next round. And I think maybe that's where I need to revisit it, right?
Yeah.
But again, this is what makes it fun. Whenever I played it, I got in, I didn't have a team.
Right.
I really didn't understand the point of it. I just saw that it was super popular. And honestly, I wasn't angry. I wasn't upset. I kept losing. I kept getting knocked off the map. I'm like, dude, I guess I don't get it. And I hopped out.
Gotcha.
So I get it. It's really just intended to be goofy.
It's a really goofy game. It plays on the silliness. It plays on the, oh, can I dodge this in time? Nope, I got hit and I'm flying across the map, like in a really funny, like if I'm playing Smash kind of type of way.
That's what I meant by jamboree. So I don't mean that there's a bunch of different game types. What I mean is each time you're coming into a new map, the obstacles that will hit you through the air are different.
Yes.
And the outcome is always different. So like on the one where there's the windmill, there might be some obstacle that comes over the top and smacks you from behind and hits you through the air.
Right.
But also if you're really good, you could time it, hit the windmill and fly into the like end zone where you're supposed to go.
Yeah.
So it's like, it really shows you the elements of like, there is elements of the madness that you can use the madness to your advantage. I'm not smart enough. I was just getting smoked.
And to kind of give a bit of context to what Matt's saying, picture if you were playing miniature golf and that windmill's kind of going by and you're trying to get that ball through just at the right time. You are the ball.
But you're a potato with arms.
A big potato ball. So, Matt, the years of this going through, all the battle royales, what is something, if a new one came out, what would it look like? What would you hope that it looked like, where you're like, okay, this would hold my attention, this is something that it's intriguing, they're doing things right? What would be the piece?
Battle royales with saves. I think Tarkov is really close.
Okay.
Have you heard of Escape from Tarkov?
I've heard of it, yeah.
So I think that is the closest to my idea of perfect.
Okay.
A drop-in game where you can come in with gear that you've already earned before.
Nice.
Or come in with none. That's a scav. You're a scavenger. You're coming in with nothing.
Right.
I think where I'm not attracted is war games. Being stuck in just a very realistic war setting is not always my interest. So that's something that Tarkov has lost me on.
Okay.
That I think another iteration of a game could. And if I'm dreaming up that game in my head, it could even be like a Marvel game where you can pick a Marvel character, a grounded character, and it's Marvel zombies. And you're surviving hordes and hordes and hordes of zombies. And you're playing with other people, and maybe you're trying to make it to certain superhero factories. You're trying to make it to New York to Reed Richards. You're trying to make it to Mexico to save XYZ. Like, that's something I would enjoy.
Okay.
I just don't like the war aspect. Being in Russia, being in the Siberian winter, being in this harsh winter. Like it's cool. It's overplayed.
Yeah.
It's overplayed for me. So I think whenever I think of a battle royale game, I think being able to drop in and have that sense of urgency around your life, but also having the ability to extract and not necessarily have to out-survive everyone.
Nice.
If that's really me being specific. I love the ability to drop in and having to fight for my life, and that ability to really duke it out with others for that win. But also I want that out. Maybe I drop in, I'm not feeling it. I just got in 3 fights and barely scraped out, right? I barely won those fights. I know I'm not winning at the end. You couldn't hit a broadside of a barn shooting all over like Dumb and Dumber. But you add in a side objective where, you know what, you go kill this NPC, you get a key, and you can get out of the game. Maybe you have a high enough rank that you can get in through this armory where you can save this life, but you're going to get respawned in another game where you have to make it out. There's elements you could add to still put challenge to it, but allow people to have outs rather than I'm dead.
Right. I like that a lot. I think just to kind of touch on you jumping into a different area after you get something, I would love to see that. You mentioning that, imagine you going to a whole different lobby because you unlock something, and maybe you're a different type of character in that lobby. You serve a different purpose than what you were before. I think that has a lot of play too, and that would be a really nice thing.
Well, and it can go either way, right? Hey, you went to a really difficult area of the map in your solo playthrough. You killed a raid boss who's super aggressive, and you got his key card. Maybe you go into another raid and you are him. So those scav players that are in there, they're fighting you, and you're going to tear them up. You're going to take their gear. But they had the expectation. They knew they were coming in for an aggressive, player, but they didn't know it was going to actually be a human player.
Exactly.
On the flip side, maybe you're not that savage, and you get the key card, and it gives you the option to come in and help someone else out with that higher gear, kill that guy, or you can be the savior character to that guy. There's so many avenues you can go.
Yeah.
Fortnite has 19 different Jonesies. There are 19 different versions of a guy named Jonesy and a banana. And I love that. That's not something that turns me away from the game. So, being able to add those elements, you see bits and pieces, those little breadcrumbs in other games, but I definitely think there's something there that the next 5-10 years, we really could see some cool iterations or evolutions to that type of game.
I can't wait to see it. I know it's a young category for the most part when it comes to all the other ones. But I think there's some good things that they've definitely landed on very well. And I think there's some bad things that it's just a learning experience. So hopefully we see something like that in the future.
So what games have the time still to take those learning experiences and really get to the next level?
One that we haven't mentioned actually, I think Apex definitely has the ability to still stay really on top, just depending on how they execute what they do. Apex was a game that I know at the beginning I played, and then I fizzled out just because of the way they changed the mechanics.
So how long ago was at the beginning? I don't know how long ago Apex came out.
That's such a good question. I would say, and I'll do a little cliff note on this, this should be about, I want to say 4 to 5 years.
Okay, so it has a good life cycle so far. 5 years is a good amount of time.
Just to give them an honorable mention, but it is a game that I would definitely look at going back to, just seeing if they pique my interest.
I mean, I could definitely see that, Cliff. They have a good competitive scene.
Yeah.
So any game that has actual competitors out, pro level players, that means that it has some credence to that brand. Right. But also to your point, like Warzone, they've lost so many players by making bad decisions. You can also lose players by making no decisions. So yeah, I definitely could appreciate that. Today we talked about so many different battle royales, but this really isn't our bread and butter. So if you have a battle royale that you are dedicated to or that you really want us to try, reach out to us on thelegendofgamingpodcast.com or reach out to us on our socials at The Legend of Gaming Podcast on IG, X, or Facebook. And until next time, we'll talk to you later.
Peace.